Think back to school. The books on the shelf, the maps on the wall, the stories you were told about where you came from, who built this country, and why the world is arranged the way it is. Now ask yourself something you probably never thought to ask at the time. Who chose that? Who decided which stories made it into the textbook and which ones didn't? Who decided that home economics wasn't worth your time? That woodwork and metalwork and needlework were optional at best and gone entirely at worst. That you needed to know the dates of battles, but not how to read a contract, file a tax return, or cook a meal. Someone made those decisions, every single one of them, and every single one of them had a reason. This is parallel. And today, what if everything you learned in school was chosen by someone with an agenda?
Parallel takes one what if and follows it wherever it leads. Like and subscribe if you want to come with us. Let's begin.
I sit in meetings that nobody knows happen, not secret meetings. Nothing so dramatic, and just quiet ones, in beige rooms, with people from the department and people from the ministry, and occasionally someone from an industry body who has helpfully offered to fund the new science wing. And in those meetings we decide what a generation will be taught, which version of history, which texts, which skills, what goes in, and what quietly comes out. Home economics came out in the 90s. Too domestic, someone said. Not aspirational enough. We were preparing young people for careers, not kitchens. Woodwork went, metalwork went, needlework went. Replaced with more contact time for tested subjects. Subjects that produce data. Data that produces rankings. Rankings that produce funding. I remember one meeting where someone asked, should we include basic financial literacy? Debt, interest, budgeting? The room went quiet in a particular way. And then someone said, that's probably best left to parents. We moved on. I've thought about that moment a lot since then, because I knew even then that the parents least equipped to teach financial literacy were the ones whose children needed it most. I tell myself we make the best decisions we can with the pressures we have. Most days I believe that.
There has never been a neutral curriculum. Not once, not anywhere, not ever. Every education system in history has been built around an answer to the same unspoken question. What kind of person do we need this child to become? In medieval Europe, the answer was a faithful subject of God and crown. The curriculum was scripture, Latin, and obedience. The Prussian model of the 19th century, which most modern schools are still built on, was designed to produce punctual, disciplined, industrially useful citizens. Factory-ready, army-ready, not question-ready. In the 20th century, states on every side of every political divide understood instinctively that the classroom was a country's most powerful tool. Soviet schools taught that capitalism was exploitation. American schools taught that communism was tyranny. Both were teaching children what to think about the world before those children were old enough to examine the evidence themselves. The British curriculum spent decades teaching an empire as a story of civilization and progress. The parts about famines, forced labor, and extracted wealth came much later. For many, they haven't come at all. Every map has a center. Whoever draws the map decides where that center is. And for most of the history of Western education, the child in the classroom never thought to ask, who was holding the pen? Let's talk about what disappeared. For most of the 20th century, British schools taught children how to do things. Home economics, how to cook a nutritious meal from basic ingredients, how to manage a household budget, how to sew, repair, and maintain the things you own, woodwork and metalwork, how to measure, cut, join, and build, how materials behave, how things are made, the quiet confidence of making something with your hands, needlework, not just sewing, but patience, precision, the understanding that things worth having take time. Social studies, how a community works, how a council meeting runs, how a bill becomes a law, how you, specifically, have both rights and responsibilities in the place where you live. These subjects were removed or marginalized across the 80s and 90s. The official reason was modernization. Aspiration. We were preparing children for a knowledge economy, not a manufacturing one. But ask what replaced them. More testing, more standardization, more subjects that produce measurable outputs that can be ranked in league tables, that attract funding, that justify the decisions of the people who made them. And ask who benefits from a generation that cannot cook, cannot fix, cannot make, cannot maintain. The ready meal industry benefits. The fast fashion industry benefits. The payday loan industry benefits enormously from a population that was never taught how compound interest works. The machine benefits because a person who cannot do for themselves must pay someone else to do it for them. And a person who must pay must keep working. And a person who must keep working doesn't have the time to ask why. Here's the thing that should make you pause. Every society believes its education system is the reasonable one. In North Korea, children learn that their leader is essentially divine. They learn a history in which their nation is noble and its enemies are monsters. They learn exactly what the state needs them to believe. We watch that and call it indoctrination. In many countries, religion is woven through every subject. Certain questions are not asked. Certain conclusions are not reached. The curriculum produces the citizen the state requires. We watch that and also call it indoctrination. In 1930s Germany, schools taught racial theory as science. Children learned a version of history in which their superiority was biological fact. Teachers who disagreed found new careers. We look back at that and call it the most obvious indoctrination imaginable. And then we look at our own classrooms, at the version of history that starts in certain places and stops in others, at the economic system taught as natural law rather than human choice, at the absence of the skills that might make a person less dependent, less compliant, less easy to manage. And we call it education. The difference between indoctrination and education often comes down to whether you're inside it or outside it, and whether you're allowed to notice. A generation has now grown up without the practical curriculum. They are, in many measurable ways, more qualified than any before them. More GCSEs, more A-levels, more degrees, and many of them cannot wire a plug, cannot hem a pair of trousers, cannot make a meal from raw ingredients, cannot read a tenancy agreement well enough to know when they're being cheated, cannot look at a credit card statement and understand what it is costing them. This is not their failure, it is ours, because we told them that these things didn't matter, that aspiration meant something different, that the goal was qualifications, not capability, a certificate, not a life. And so we produced, efficiently at scale, people who are very good at being assessed and less good at being adults. People who know the causes of the First World War, but not how to dispute an unfair charge on their energy bill. People who can create a 60-second viral video, but have never negotiated anything in their lives. People who were taught, above all else, to find the right answer, in a world that mostly asks questions that don't have one. Here is the question the curriculum designer never asks in the beige room. Not, what do we need this child to know? But, what do we need this child to become? Because those are different questions. And the gap between them is where education either happens or quietly fails to. A person who knows how to feed themselves is harder to exploit. A person who can fix what breaks is less dependent. A person who understands how money actually works is more difficult to keep in debt. A person who was taught to ask why is considerably harder to govern. None of this is conspiracy. It doesn't need to be. It just needs enough people in enough beige rooms, making enough decisions that seem reasonable at the time, and never quite asking who benefits from the ones they're making. The curriculum designer goes home, makes dinner, something simple, something he learned from his mother, because nobody taught him at school. Pays a bill he doesn't fully understand. Watches the news. Tomorrow there is another meeting. Another subject under review. Another decision about what a generation will and won't be given. A few years ago it was coding. Everyone needed to code. Now AI does it all for them. Maybe they can become a ballerina. He tells himself they make the best decisions they can. Most days, he believes that. This was Parallel. If the question stayed with you, you're one of us. Like and subscribe and we'll see you in the next What If.